Vava and Guanyi are the names that I go by, and many things, but I would say uh, mother, coffee exporter, producer, what else? Author, but someone who's just extremely passionate about all things coffee and using coffee to empower communities that I work in. So Gente del Futuro is an organization that we started about 4 years ago with my partner Alejandro Galante. Initially, um, the idea and concept behind Gente del Futuro originated from Colombia through some work around training young people coffee skills outside of just farm work. And then having met Alejandro in Ethiopia a couple of years ago as well, we thought, why not partner up? Our different organizations come together and find a way to elevate young people, both Kenya, Tanzania. So we kicked off a project about 2019 where we supported 12 young women, 6 girls from Kenya, 6 girls from Tanzania, gave them scholarships to just get exposure to coffee beyond the farm. So to sort of succinctly describe what GDF is about, it's coffee education for young people, in particular women, in coffee producing countries. And currently we're running a project in Lamu County where we are working to introduce young people in that community to opportunities within the coffee industry in the hope that it can open up employment opportunities and economic empowerment for youth in that community. Well, okay, first of all, the decolonization carries so many, I would say, it encapsulates so many things. There's decolonizing the mind, there's decolonizing actions, there's decolonizing system structures, so many things. But to me, it's power structures, because I feel, having been in this space and especially getting into the Kenyan coffee industry as a young person who had never had exposure to the intricacies and the workings of the sector, I got in very naively, very innocently, just with the hope of like, I want to make a difference. I want to, put farmers at the forefront, and also just wondered why there were not any other women who were Black like myself, really like in the coffee sector. So for me, well, the dream has always been, if we can start from the root of, the systems and the structures that sort of govern how we work with coffee in a producing country, from how it's traded, how we buy coffee, how we sell it, how it's been labeled. I mean, a lot of what we've inherited is from colonial Kenya. And I feel like the structures from colonial Kenya have also prohibited a lot of young people from pursuing careers in coffee because they just don't fit in. The capital, needed to actually start a coffee business is just totally out there for any young person who ever has the dream to be a trader. So a lot of things are sort of a lot of things, and I'm talking about the structures, were sort of set up that it was harder for local companies to actually get into the coffee industry. So I'm extremely passionate about policy, and policy that that governs the space that we trade in. And I hope that at some point in the future, hopefully not too far out, that my government, together with industry players, can sort of redefine some of these policies in which we operate. Unfortunately, there's so many that prohibit growth for small and medium enterprises like myself. But, you get into a business, you start trading, you can't quite, check out. So you have to find ways and means of still sustaining your business and actually, making a living. That is one, systems and structures. The other is just the mindsets of the people that work in the coffee sector, whereby, as someone who's grown up in a coffee family, my family does grow coffee. My grandmother grew coffee. My uncle grows coffee. But some of the systems and structures prohibit me to really go out there and be like, hey, I'm the producer or whatever, um, because of rules and regulations within the Kenyan coffee trading, system. So I have to then pick and choose. Do you want to be the producer? Do you want to be the exporter? Where is your strength, and where, what do you do best? Another example of, the decolonization is just how land rights, which, in as much as a lot of us think that the issue we have with land issues, especially around women and ownership of land, stem from our own culture, our own what do you call it, like inheritance issues as Africans. A lot of these land issues stem from colonialism and the patriarchy that sort of set these systems up that sort of disallow women to be at the forefront of that economic empowerment in a space like this. So decolonization is so many things, but I think one key thing that stood out to me, especially having been exposed to the Western world when it comes to coffee trade, was how the misperceptions around what happens, in a producing country, in the coffee chain, how women really don't seem to have a place, and we're seen as just additions, like flowers, and not like the actual people that are doing the work, so that we're ornamental as opposed to real drivers of the change and the real workers, because we're the workers on the ground. But you show up at a coffee meeting, you show up at an expo, and someone just sees you as an ornamental feature that is just pretty, and then a lot of people are surprised when you say something that seems knowledgeable to them or that strikes them as being important. So the topic is so wide, I can go on and on, but I'm trying to be as succinct as possible. And yeah, but it's a wide topic that can stir up also a lot of emotions around my personal experiences and what I've actually seen out there as well. There's obviously, like you're saying, there's overlap in a lot of issues around decolonization and gender. And then there is like some things that I find separate, which for me the one thing that sounds out as separate when it comes to gender is local culture and how women are perceived in specific communities. For example, if you're in a Muslim community, if you're in rural Kenya, there's certain beliefs and certain norms around women and things like that, which is why I feel like a lot of the work that is done around gender should be localized, and nothing you don't have a general sort of canvas that is like one size fits all when it comes to gender work or gender empowerment. If you go to Latin America, there's obviously a lot of similarities with Africa and how women are perceived and treated. But then you go to rural communities in Kenya, for example, in the Rift Valley, women are probably empowered differently from women in central Kenya because of tribe. And then in Kenya, you've got a ton of tribes where everything is different. And then there's religion. The overlap, like where I find colonialism sort of had a part to play with the story of the woman and societies. Colonialism brought religion. It also brought, loss of land and property and things like that. And I believe religion has had a huge role in disempowering or disenfranchising women because of the whole perception of a woman's place, and women should be like this, and women should be subservient to their husbands and all of that. And I feel like African society inherently, by having the colonial masters, we picked up some of these beliefs which don't serve us appropriately, which is when you find issues stemming up in terms of land rights, inheritance, and things like that. So there's definitely overlaps, so many overlaps, especially also because even with colonialism, and given we're a former British colony, there's issues of the monarchy and things like that, and us still revering the monarchy. And you've seen how all those things play out, whereby it's power, it's power imbalances, as well as what's a woman's place and what are women entitled to and all of that. Whereas, I feel like African society, we had our own beliefs, but we also, like a lot of African society, which these are stories you never hear of, where women were actually revered as the most powerful and the decision makers in a lot of the African communities. However, come colonization and some of these things are wiped out, and there's religion, there's the Bible, and then there's the queen and monarchies and things like that, and a lot of things which are a bit uncomfortable to talk about to some people. But I'm like, if you do research, if you historically look at why we are the way we are as Africans or as Kenyans, a lot of it has to do with what was left by our colonial masters in Kenya. And for example, if I ask someone today, why can't a producer sell their coffee at farm gate, no one has such a great answer to it. It's just these are the systems that were left by the British. We follow whatever because we really don't understand the coffee trade. We're just picking, but we're going to work on improving policies as we go along. But we literally copy pasted what the Brits left us, even with a lot of the processing methods and everything. So now with what's happening in coffee today, you're finding farmers being maybe perhaps more willing to experiment beyond a washed processed coffee and things like that. So I'm like, we as Africans, we as folks who've grown up in coffee producing countries that were former colonies, we also have our own journey to decolonize our minds, like to also believe in our own people. Because I'm like, decolonization is not left, it's not something that only white people in coffee should do. It's also us as local native people to the land. We need to decolonize our mindsets and know that we are good enough. In a way, we are good enough to be great coffee traders. You can be a barista. That is what we also try to impart even with Gente del Futuro, is that help can come from home. Help all the resources we need to thrive as Kenyans are within us. They are local. However, collaborations are important, because I also believe in the power of collaboration and the power of also being sharing knowledge and sharing some of these insights, so that we're building better coffee communities. Stay curious. For me, I'm like, one thing I know, it's especially, I'm looking at how America operates and how folks in New York live and work. It's like, oftentimes my observations that people don't have time for people. Like, you're just like going about your business, and people don't have that moment or that time to just chill, breathe, ask a question about what's in my cup, what's in my whatever. I don't know. A lot of people don't have that lifestyle where they have those moments to pause and actually ask those questions. So I really do appreciate consumers, even in Lamu, that we meet who are curious about how we source and all of that. For me, I'm like, in as much as it's a lot of time and effort for someone living in New York or whatever, ask questions, stay curious, and just get to know maybe how Joe Coffee works or whatever, or where that coffee comes from. The more questions you ask, the more you get to know. And I'm just like, I would ask consumers, I know this is a tough thing to tell consumers, but I'm like, don't be lazy. Like, it's important for you to know what you're putting in your body. Like, do some digging, like even if it's Instagram or just looking for videos as to what does, and I don't like using this word ethical, because I think it's like a word that's been abused in our sector, with people thinking that ethical is a label, it's a certification. It's none of those things. And I want consumers to go beyond certifications, and consumers to go beyond labels, and consumers to truly take time to pause and ask, where's my coffee coming from? I know it's like, people are like, I don't have time for that, like whatever, but I'm like, do you love enough, you love yourself enough to kind of care about what you're ingesting in your body or whatever? So I'm like, get curious. The more curious you are, the more you learn in life, because ignorance is also no excuse, eh? So it's like, if I can imagine consumers who are buying Joe Coffee are conscious consumers. These are consumers who are looking for something different, something that has a story, something interesting that is not your ordinary, type of coffee. So I'm like, so I think that's the simplest way I can put it, is just stay curious, ask questions, because I'm like, people can slap a label, call it fair trade, call it whatever. I know we operate under B Corp, but I'm like, B Corp certification doesn't speak totally for who we are. If you do a couple of, if you dig a little deeper, you'll see maybe the kind of relationships we have with farmers, like how much time and effort goes into investing in just like photography on coffee farms or visiting coffee farms. People think like just going to grab a beautiful photo like on a Kenyan coffee trip is easy. It's not. Like, it's all these farms we source from are like 8 hours apart, 10 hours. Like, you literally need about 10 days on a minimum to like traverse maybe three farms from different parts of Kenya. So I'm like, for me, the challenge is to consumers. How curious are you? And do you care about yourself? Do you care about what you're drinking? Ask the questions. And if your roaster is not able to answer those questions, then there's a problem. So